Hey guys, tonight we drift across the ocean breeze to the distant whispers of another time, when dreams of a new world shimmered upon the quiet Atlantic horizon. You stand on the deck of a wooden ship, sails glowing like moonlit clouds, listening to the rhythmic sigh of waves that sound almost like a slow heartbeat. There is salt on your lips and a promise in the air. The year is 1607, and the world is wider than anyone truly understands. Someone sneezes beside you, which reminds you that even the bravest explorers still get seasick. You fit right in, unless you re the type who can survive without Wi-Fi, in which case, well, good luck. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You close your eyes for a moment and feel the ship sway gently. The timber creaks like a sleepy sigh, and ropes shift overhead with a faint groan. The night air carries the mixed scents of pine, tar, and the distant memory of land. You imagine the shoreline somewhere far ahead, still hidden under the fog. Virginia, they call it. A word that sounds both royal and gentle, as if it were invented for the soft vowels of dreams. When the first glimmer of dawn arrives, it does not shout. It spills quietly, like milk into tea, soft, pale, patient. The horizon stretches open in hues of rose and gold, and the air carries that hushed anticipation found only at the edge of something new. On deck, men stir slowly, rubbing their hands, murmuring to one another. The thought hums among them like a shared heartbeat. We made it. The waves grow shallow. Gulls wheel and cry above, and oars dip with renewed rhythm. No longer weary, but purposeful. A soft wind slides through your hair, tasting faintly of salt and pine. Ahead, the coastline of Virginia breathes beneath a thin veil of mist. Pale sand glimmers untouched, a world away from England's damp cobblestones and crowded ports. When you step onto the shore, the sound of your boots on wet sand feels impossibly loud. The others follow, carrying crates, tools, and a flag marked with the cross of St. George. This quiet moment, so ordinary in its small motions, will one day be written into history as the founding of Jamestown, the first English settlement in America. But today, it is only weary travelers and a stretch of wilderness that hums softly under a rising sun. The air smells of river water and damp wood, soft and grounding. A few men kneel in quiet prayer, their whispers carried lightly on the breeze. Tall oaks and cypress line the shore, leaves trembling as if sharing secrets, the forest alive and quietly watching. On the river, the ship lowers its flag, its reflection rippling in the morning light. Faint streaks of blue shimmer beneath the surface, ghostly companions trailing the hull across the Atlantic. Some call it sea fire, a plankton trick. Others see a blessing, a gentle welcome. It is hauntingly beautiful, like the sea singing a wordless lullaby. As the sun climbs higher, settlers begin to unload supplies. The clink of tools, the scrape of wood, and the low hum of work blend into a soft music of beginnings. Someone lights a small fire, smoke curling upward with the scent of pine and promise. Civilization at its birth seems to smell like this. Fresh, smoky, hopeful. You wander inland. The earth is soft beneath your boots, dark and rich, dotted with wild grass bowing under each step. A dragonfly lands on your sleeve, wings glittering like shards of glass. Somewhere nearby, water trickles through reeds, each sound amplified in the quiet pulse of untouched land. By midday, sunlight pools across the clearing. Settlers move with slow, careful rhythm, raising tents, stacking barrels, marking the first outlines of the settlement. Near the river, a group unfurls the English flag, red against endless blue, fluttering in the wind. Someone murmurs a quiet cheer, gentle as a sigh, as if even triumph must whisper here. History will remember this as the moment England claimed Virginia. But for you, standing here with sun-warmed shoulders and salt on your lips, it feels smaller and more sacred, a quiet exhale at the edge of time. When evening comes, the air turns cool and tender. Fires flicker along the shore, their smoke drifting lazily toward the stars. You sit beside one, the warmth seeping into your hands. The river gleams like black glass. Someone hums a song from home, low, steady, half forgotten. Sparks drift upward and fade into the night sky, joining the constellations like tiny prayers. You lean back against a log, your cloak drawn close. The forest sways gently in the dark, the branches whispering to one another. You think of the glowing lights that followed your ship, of how they danced across the sea. Maybe they were only nature's trick. Maybe they were something more. Either way, beginnings often wear the mask of mystery. Laughter drifts through the camp, soft, weary, but warm enough to keep the dark at bay. Someone jokes about missing a London bed. Another claims his back has turned to oak. The sound is small, human, and full of quiet life. You realize that humor, like fire, is how people stay alive. As night deepens, you pull your cloak tighter. Crickets hum. The fire crackles once, then sinks into a soft glow. Beyond the trees, the sea whispers its slow, endless song. You close your eyes, and for a moment you see home. Bread baking, candlelight through fogged glass, the comfort of belonging. Then it fades, replaced by the tender hush of this new land. You breathe in pine and smoke. You breathe out, and the horizon seems to breathe with you. Out on the tide, faint blue lights shimmer, a reminder that the unknown can be gentle too. The embers dim. The river glows under the moon. Around you, the settlers sleep, their breaths mingling with the rhythm of waves. The new world hums softly, like a cradle of sea and dreams. And tonight, you are home. You wake to the soft crackle of an early fire and the gentle stirring of voices carried by mist. The air is damp and cool, faintly sweet, as though the earth exhales after a long, quiet dream. Canvas tents ripple softly, edges darkened by dew. The sky, still half asleep, wears shy shades of lilac and gold. Ash, soil, river water, and wood smoke mingle in the air, blending like an old, comforting perfume. The first morning in Jamestown arrives quietly. You stretch, feeling the stiffness of weeks at sea. The uneven ground beneath your boots is solid, grounding, miraculous. Nearby, a man stokes the fire, humming softly, insisting he doesn't know the tune. Perhaps it is a song born of half-dreaming, half-waking. Beyond the clearing, the James River glimmers in the sun's first rays, mist dancing lightly on its surface. Settlers move slowly through the haze, shapes blurred, almost ghost-like, hauling crates, brushing off dirt, all in a quiet rhythm. Time seems to pause, allowing the morning to breathe. A bucket tips. Water splashes onto packed soil, releasing the rich scent of wet clay. Men speak of building a stronger fort, but breakfast claims their attention. Laughter rises when one claims he could eat a whole ship roasted properly. The flag raised yesterday stands near the riverbank, crimson softened to rose by morning light, flapping lazily in the breeze. A simple gesture, flag, pole, patch of earth, yet monumental. Under a sky vast enough to swallow silence, it exhales centuries of ambition. Smoke curls from several small fires, gray ribbons twisting and fading. The scent of burning pine mingles with damp leaves, and you breathe slower, deeper. Birds call through the trees, clear and bright. The morning teaches patience, the kind best absorbed before the sun climbs higher and work begins. Jamestown awakens gently, not with fanfare, but with the hush of new beginnings, the quiet rhythm of life taking root in a land that waits patiently for its story to unfold. In the distance, you hear birds calling, unfamiliar voices with bright, clear notes. They echo through the forest like a distant choir. The settlers glance up, listening, smiling. Someone remarks that the birds here sing longer, maybe because they have more to be grateful for. You laugh quietly, thinking that might be the kindest kind of arrogance, assuming even nature shares your excitement. When breakfast finally comes, it's simple. Roasted cornmeal, a handful of dried fruit, and tea brewed over the fire. The mugs clink gently as they're passed around, still steaming in the morning chill. The flavor is rough and smoky, the kind of taste that insists you're alive. You sip slowly, watching the light grow stronger, noticing how it paints everything golden, the tents, the tools, even the faces of those around you. Near the tree line, a few settlers gather to discuss plans for the fort's layout. They speak of angles and boundaries, of safety and trade. Their words drift toward you like the soft hum of bees. It's strange to think that such calm conversation will one day shape an entire colony. You pull your coat tighter and let the thought linger like a distant melody. A sudden gust of wind passes, cool and steady, carrying with it something unusual. A faint sound, almost like singing. You pause. It's not a tune you recognize. It comes and goes, rising just above the rustle of trees and the lap of water. Others hear it too, their faces turned toward the forest. The sound is delicate, wordless, neither human nor entirely natural. A few men joke that it's the wind finding its voice. One mutters something about angels. Another, clearly practical, says it's just branches rubbing together. You're not sure. The sound fades, leaving behind a curious emptiness, a silence that feels like the pause between heartbeats. You listen harder, but there's only the murmur of the river and the crackle of the fire. You tell yourself it was nothing, yet some part of you files it away, the way you'd remember a half-forgotten dream. The work continues. Stakes are hammered into the ground to mark boundaries for new structures. The rhythmic tap of wood on wood blends with the soft drone of insects awakening in the grass. You notice how light filters through the leaves above, breaking into fragments that dance across the dirt. It feels almost like a blessing, or at least a friendly nod from nature saying, "You may stay, but please behave." As the sun climbs, you feel its warmth spread across your back, slow and reassuring. The settlers' shadows stretch long behind them, like a procession of soft echoes. Everything smells of beginnings: fresh-cut wood, sweat, smoke, earth. Even the breeze seems to hum with the quiet promise of permanence. By late morning, a sense of rhythm settles over the camp. Tools clink, fires hiss, and the air fills with the steady motion of work. There is comfort in repetition, in the way small sounds stack together to make something like peace. You realize that history often grows from monotony, from patient hands shaping the same task again and again, until time itself decides to take notice. Stepping away from the bustle, the world feels vast again. The river gleams like glass, reflecting tired eyes, wind-ruffled hair, and a faint, knowing smile. For a moment, you see two selves, the explorer you are and the dreamer you hope to remain. You chuckle softly. Even here, in the middle of nowhere, vanity endures. The sun climbs higher, spilling warmth over everything. The camp has settled. Tents stand orderly, fires burn steadily, the flag flutters proudly. Faint laughter drifts from those mending nets by the river, a simple joy that feels like the heartbeat of this fragile, new world. Alive, yet delicate. A soft wind brushes your cheek, carrying the faint echo of that strange singing, lingering like a memory. The land itself seems to hum beneath its breath. No one mentions it, yet the silence that follows is full, not empty. A quiet that holds stories before they even unfold. You breathe slowly, watching the mist lift, the flag shine, and the morning stretch like a slow exhale. Jamestown, still just a handful of tents and dreams, already feels eternal. You smile faintly, thinking, perhaps this is what hope sounds like when it wakes. The day begins softly, with the hum of labor rolling through the settlement like a steady heartbeat. The sun, still tender from morning, filters through thin clouds and paints the clearing in a muted gold. Somewhere nearby, a bird trills lazily, unconcerned with the weight of history being nailed together plank by plank. You can almost taste the smell of fresh-cut pine, damp and sweet, as if the trees are still whispering about the forest they once belonged to. The settlers work in an easy rhythm, no rush, no urgency, just the calm persistence of people who understand that permanence must be coaxed into existence gently. Wooden mallets rise and fall in even tempo, their muffled thuds blending with the low murmur of voices. The sound is strangely soothing, like rain on canvas. Each tap of the hammer seems to echo against the wide silence of this new world, a slow percussion marking the birth of something enduring. A few men are setting the first posts into the ground, their boots sinking slightly into the moist earth. The soil is darker here, rich and loamy. Every strike of the hammer sends a faint tremor through the ground. Not violent, just enough to remind you that the land is listening. Others haul logs from the tree line, dragging them through ferns and dew. You notice how carefully they work, as though every piece of timber carries a fragment of hope. The project is more than a building. It's the beginning of Jamestown's fort, a shape of security in uncertain terrain. The outline is already etched into the dirt, a rough triangle facing the river, corners marked with wooden stakes. Weeks of work lie ahead, but no one complains. There's comfort in creating, in focusing on something beyond the endless unknown. Nearby, a woman kneels by a fire pit, stirring a pot that sends lazy curls of steam into the morning air. The smell drifts, onions, salted meat, domestic scents that make the wilderness feel like home. Settlers pause to wipe sweat from their brows, exchanging small smiles before returning to work. You catch yourself smiling too, caught in the gentle rhythm of effort. Hammering continues, joined by the rasp of saws. Wood shavings curl and fall, glinting in the sunlight like tiny golden ribbons. Picking one up, you roll it between your fingers, smooth, fragrant, alive. Creation, even something as simple as a wall, feels sacred out here. Near the edge of the clearing, a young man tends a small patch of earth, pressing a seedling into the soil. It's said to be an apple tree from England, a quiet promise of the future. Settlers joke about drinking cider under its shade someday, yet no one records what became of it. Some claim it never grew. Others whisper it vanished after a storm. In this wild, vast place, such mysteries feel ordinary, small, fragile wonders hiding quietly in plain sight. The air grows warmer as the sun climbs higher. Shirt sleeves are rolled up, and sweat glistens like dew on skin. You can hear the creak of rope, the groan of timber settling into place. Each sound feels like a slow conversation between man and earth. No one shouts, there's no need. Even the work itself seems to move with its own quiet wisdom. You take a slow walk around the emerging fort. The walls are low for now, just waist height, but their shape is clear. They form a soft, reassuring boundary against the uncertainty of the forest. It's a humble beginning, yet somehow it feels immense. You can almost picture future evenings here, the sound of rain against these same walls, the flicker of firelight through cracks, the distant murmur of river water. The thought soothes you, like a lullaby hummed by the land itself. Not far away, a few settlers have stopped to rest beneath the shade of an oak. They share water from a wooden canteen, their laughter drifting lazily through the air. You catch snippets of talk about families left behind, about dreams of gardens, about how the stars here seem closer, brighter. Someone says, almost wistfully, perhaps they shine lower because the heavens are curious. You find the idea charming, and it lingers in your mind like a feather caught in a breeze. The scent of pine tar and smoke mingles with the breeze, grounding you in the moment. Each plank fitted, each nail tapped, carries the rhythm of quiet triumph. History often remembers the grand events, the declarations, the discoveries. But here, in the hush between hammer strikes, you sense that real history is written in patience. As afternoon stretches on, the shadows lengthen. The fort now stands taller, its walls enclosing a small haven of order amid the vastness. From the river, the reflection of the new structure shimmers faintly, as though the water itself approves. You pause to watch it, feeling the slow satisfaction of progress. It's not dramatic, not heroic, but it's steady, and that's enough. The workers finally rest, setting their tools aside with soft thuds. A faint breeze passes through the clearing, cool and kind. You can hear it weaving through the trees, brushing against the half-built walls, carrying the scent of wood in dreams. For a brief moment, the entire settlement seems to exhale together. You look toward the little apple tree again, its leaves trembling lightly. It's barely more than a twig now, fragile and uncertain. Still, you can't help but believe that somewhere, somehow, its roots will find the strength to hold on. And even if no one remembers it later, you do. The image of it standing quietly beside the new fort, a whisper of home in a world yet unnamed. The sky turns soft again, clouds drifting like pale sails above the trees. The hammers are silent now. Only the faint hum of the river remains, steady and eternal. You take one last look at the wooden walls, rough, uneven, but full of promise, and feel a calm pride settle over you. The day has been long, but gentle. You close your eyes, listening to the sounds of evening beginning. A fire crackling, a gull calling somewhere downstream, the wind sighing through timber. Jamestown is taking shape, not through conquest or command, but through care. Gentle hands, wooden walls, and the quiet hope that what is built slowly will last. The afternoon drapes itself in quiet silk. The air feels softer here by the river, where the James glides slow and unhurried beneath the light. You walk toward the bank, the sound of water folding gently over pebbles, a rhythm that could soothe even the most restless mind. The settlement hums faintly behind you, the distant thump of work, the creak of timber, but here, near the edge of the current, everything feels slower, dreamlike. A few settlers have gathered by the water, their movements calm and deliberate. A small fire crackles between smooth river stones, sending a thin ribbon of smoke into the pale sky. Over it rests a blackened kettle, its sides glinting like polished bronze. Someone pours a scoop of dried leaves inside, and the aroma drifts through the air, faintly floral, faintly earthy, a familiar comfort carried thousands of miles from home. The river reflects the light in quiet ripples, as though nodding in approval. You sit slightly apart, the fire's warmth brushing your face, listening to the soft murmur of conversation. The words hardly matter. It is the cadence that soothes, patient, measured, each syllable like a pebble dropped into still water. You imagine that back in England, similar rituals unfold each afternoon. Careful boiling, gentle pouring, shared silence. This moment seems to bridge worlds, familiar and new, through the simple act of tea. Downstream, sails appear, white against the blue-gray horizon. The first supply ships arrive at last. Settlers rise slowly, shading their eyes, standing straight but quietly, hesitant to disturb the solemnity of arrival. The vessels glide gracefully, masts slicing through the air like quills across parchment. The wind sighs in their sails. As the ships dock, crewmen unload crates stamped with the crown seal. Flour, tools, fabric, salt, oil, books, and precious tea. Each thud of a crate on the wooden planks feels like a soft punctuation of relief. Settlers carry the supplies back toward the fort, a steady line of figures against the broad river. The mingling scents of tar, rope, and boiling leaves rise in a strangely comforting perfume, grounding the colony in both work and quiet gratitude. One crate, however, doesn't make it ashore. The sailors whisper that it slipped during unloading, vanished beneath the dark green water without a splash. They say it was a chest of tea, the finest blend meant as a gift for the governor. Divers searched the shallows, but found nothing. Some claimed the river swallowed it out of mischief, keeping the flavor for itself. Others joked that fish somewhere down there were now sipping delicately from porcelain cups. It's a charming thought, and you smile quietly at it. The afternoon drifts onward. The air thickens with that golden stillness that only comes when day begins to lean toward evening. Sunlight turns syrupy, catching in the ripples and clinging to the grass. You take your cup of tea, tin, dented, but perfectly warm, and watch steam curl into the wind. The taste is sharp and dry, with a ghost of honey. It's the flavor of memory, of things left behind but not forgotten. A few birds land nearby, their feet pressing small patterns into the mud. One of them hops closer, tilts its head, and seems to study you for a moment before darting away. The wind stirs the reeds in a soft sigh. The whole world feels like it's exhaling, easing itself into rest. You find yourself counting the gentle laps of water against the shore, the way the ripples widen and fade, the faint hum of insects. Time stretches thin, like spun sugar. Someone adds another log to the fire. The flames flare softly, painting the faces of those gathered with hues of amber and rose. You notice how serene they look. Tired, yes, but peaceful, like people who have found something resembling belonging. The river hums in the background, its steady current like a long, deep breath. For a moment, the entire scene feels suspended between centuries, untouched by anything harsh. You sip again, closing your eyes. Behind your eyelids, the light turns liquid, gold dripping into silence. You think of the ships anchored nearby, rocking gently in the tide. The sailors will sleep soon, lulled by the rhythm of ropes against wood. The settlers will return to their cabins, bellies warm, spirits lifted, but for now, no one moves. The world has agreed to pause. A child throws a stone into the water. The splash rings out softly, followed by ripples that glide outward like gentle thoughts. Someone laughs, a sound so easy it feels rare. You realize that this simple act, this shared tea by the river, might matter more than the fort's strong walls or the tall ships. It's the sound of calm settling into a place that once only knew wilderness. As dusk approaches, mist rises from the river, curling low around the figures and turning everything faintly silver. Voices soften. A heron lifts from the far bank, wings wide and deliberate, carrying a last glint of sunlight with it. You hear the faint hiss of the cooling kettle, the soft clink of tin cups being stacked away. The river darkens, reflecting the pale shimmer of an early moon. A cricket begins its steady rhythm, marking evening's arrival. You wrap your hands around the last warmth of your tea, now lukewarm, but somehow sweeter. It tastes of patience, of quiet peace earned one slow breath at a time. Settlers drift away, footsteps soft against the dirt. The fire burns low, embers flickering in small, sleepy sighs. You linger, watching the current drift by, carrying the memory of what has been, and what is yet to come. Ships, dreams, stories, all gliding toward the horizon. Rising, you stretch, feeling light and loose. The scent of wet earth clings to the air. Thoughts of the lost chest of tea drift in your mind, a quiet mystery for the river to keep. You imagine some unseen hand pouring another cup in the depths. Perhaps it is better that way. As you return toward the fort, the last light fades behind the trees. The water continues its song, calm, eternal, as if the earth itself is breathing in sleep. You know that tomorrow, perhaps, they will gather again, brew another pot, and listen once more to the whispers of the James. Morning drifts softly, brushing the fields in pale gold. The air smells of new earth and corn leaves, a sweetness that clings to your breath. You walk among the rows, the stalks rising tall and gentle, their tassels whispering secrets to the wind. A first harvest of Jamestown, modest, uneven, yet achingly beautiful, stretches across the clearing like a promise fulfilled. Settlers move slowly through the fields, hands brushing dry silk, feet sinking lightly into the soil. Their rhythm is patient, shaped by sunlight and quiet gratitude. You hear the rustle of leaves, the soft pull of roots as ears of corn are gathered into baskets. The sound is steady, comforting, the quiet ticking of time itself. It had not always been this way. Months ago, hunger walked the colony's narrow paths, whispering at night through empty huts. Then the Powhatan people came, cautious and deliberate, carrying gifts of seeds and quiet knowledge. They taught the settlers to plant maize in small mounds, to let beans climb the stalks for support, and to read the sky for signs of rain. Not charity, but wisdom shared like a candle passed silently. Now, in the fields, you can almost feel their lessons growing from the ground. The soil seems content, spoken to in its own language. Settlers work in quiet gratitude. Every now and then, someone hums under their breath, slow, wordless, carried more by feeling than melody. The sunlight spreads wider, turning everything it touches into gold. Even the tools, worn smooth by use, gleam faintly in the light. You bend to pick up an ear of corn, its kernels plump and shining, and realize how alive it feels. Not just food, but a quiet heartbeat of survival. The scent of dry husks mingles with the faint aroma of distant smoke, and for a moment, the air tastes like warmth itself. In the distance, a flock of birds turns in the sky, long-winged, silver-gray, their formation shifting like thought. They have come with the change of season, tracing invisible paths across the Atlantic wind. Some say that when they first appeared, they carried with them strange seeds caught in their feathers. The settlers found those seeds sprouting along the banks, small stalks of barley, unknown before in this soil. Even now, no one can explain how they arrived, only that they grew strong and bright, as though the earth had been waiting for them. The story lingers in local whispers, that the wind itself was the gardener, carrying gifts from distant shores. You smile at the thought, watching one feather drift lazily to the ground beside you. Perhaps the world is more generous than we notice. Around noon, the settlers pause to rest. They sit on woven baskets, sip water from clay jugs, and watch the fields shimmer beneath the sun. The air hums with insects and soft conversation. One man tells a quiet joke about how the corn seems to grow faster when he sings to it, and though everyone laughs, no one quite dismisses it either. Out here, humor feels like another form of prayer. You lie back for a moment, feeling the warmth seep through your clothes. The clouds above move so slowly, they seem carved from cream. Somewhere, a bee drones lazily past your ear. The day has no urgency, no command, only the slow turning of time under an endless sky. You think that maybe this is what peace looks like. Hands stained with soil, hearts unburdened, and the simple grace of enough to eat. When work resumes, it feels less like labor and more like a conversation with the land. The settlers move as if guided by the rhythm of the breeze, their sleeves rolled high, their shadows long and fluid. Each basket fills with yellow ears, glowing faintly in the afternoon light. You can almost hear the sigh of the earth, relieved, perhaps, to be finally understood. Near the edge of the field, someone plants a row of beans and squash, companions to the corn. Their leaves curl gently in the sun, soft and green, already promising more. The ground is warm beneath your feet, pulsing faintly, as if life itself is humming below. You kneel and touch it, feeling that hum run up your arm, steady and quiet. The day drifts toward evening, the light thickening into amber. The cornfields glow like bronze under a low sun. Shadows slide across the rows, slow and deliberate, like long fingers combing through gold. The settlers gather what remains of the harvest into tidy piles. The laughter of children drifts from somewhere near the river. Carried on a breeze, it smells faintly of mint and smoke. Someone lights a small fire near the center of the field, the flame dancing low, barely brighter than the setting sun. A pot of stew bubbles beside it, corn, beans, herbs, the scent rich and sweet. The settlers eat quietly, their faces calm, eyes reflecting the firelight. They do not talk much. The day has spoken enough. You watch them in that glow, each face lined with both fatigue and quiet satisfaction. It's a portrait of survival, framed by twilight. As dusk deepens, the birds return, wheeling over the water, calling softly to one another. Their wings flash briefly in the fading light, the same silver-gray messengers that once carried seeds across unknown skies. You wonder where they will go next, what other fields they might bless with their strange generosity. Maybe that's how the world grows, through small accidents of grace. The stars begin to gather, faint pinpricks at first, and brighter as the sky cools. You can hear the soft rustle of corn still swaying in the night wind, whispering stories to the moon. The settlers pack their tools, leaving the baskets stacked neatly beside the rows. A dog barks once, then settles, curling beside the fire. You linger, wrapped in the quiet. The world glows in gold and dusk, every leaf and breath suspended between work and rest. You tilt your head, feeling the sun's last warmth slide across your skin. In this moment, the new world feels kind, like a slow, welcoming song. Tomorrow will bring work and planting, but tonight the earth rests, the harvest complete. Birds tuck their wings, and sleep drifts softly over the wide, gentle land, wrapping everything in calm and quiet. The afternoon drifts into a hush so soft it feels almost like a held breath. The sun hangs low above the river, scattering gold through the drooping branches of the willows. Their thin leaves sway gently, dipping into the water like brushes tracing whispers across its surface. You walk along the bank, the grass damp beneath your boots, and the air smells faintly of river clay and warm bark. The world feels close here, intimate, enclosed by the low hum of insects and the sigh of the trees. A few settlers have gathered beneath the shade, their forms quiet and still against the moving light. Someone has spread a cloth on the grass. On it rests a small stack of papers, edges curled from the sea air. Letters, the first to arrive from England. You can almost sense the reverence that fills the air, the careful silence as each envelope is lifted, each seal broken. These are not just words on paper. They are voices from another world, the sound of remembered hearths and rain-soaked streets. You sit among them, listening as trembling hands unfold the letters. The soft rasp of paper feels louder than speech. Faces tilt to the sunlight, eyes tracing familiar handwriting. Some letters are practical, news of crops, weather, neighbors. Others spill into sentiment. We miss you every evening at supper. Your mother keeps your chair by the fire. The weight of memory presses gently, warming rather than breaking. Nearby, a kettle steams over a small flame, carrying the scent of minty, wild herbs. You sip from your tin cup, grounded in the present as voices drift through time. One man reads aloud, his accent softening with emotion. A woman closes her eyes, smiling faintly. Even the river seems to slow, listening. This was said to be the first mail to reach Jamestown, carried across the Atlantic in wooden chests wrapped in tar and canvas. Though the ink has faded, you can imagine the weight of those letters amid crates of tools and barrels of grain. Fragile, precious. At dawn, as sailors unloaded them, the settlement stirred, faces turning to the river, waiting for names to be called. One letter, however, true quiet curiosity, sent months earlier by a woman from Devon, known only by her initials, it described a dream. I saw your colony shining in the dark, the trees pale as moonlight, and the water burning blue like glass. The settlers read it repeatedly, passing it hand to hand. No one could explain it, though some swore they had glimpsed a strange light on the river, a shimmer dancing just beyond reason. You tilt your head and glance through the willow branches. The water glimmers faintly in the late sun, and for a moment you could almost believe it. The colony glowing quietly beneath a twilight sky, alive with unseen energy. You smile, knowing that dreams, too, are a kind of truth, carried across oceans to remind us that wonder still lingers between what we know and what we hope for. The light softens. Shadows gather beneath the trees, stretching long and cool across the grass. The settlers finish their reading in silence, each one folding their letters with care. Some tuck them into pockets close to the heart. Others place them in small wooden boxes, as though storing light itself. You can see the glisten of tears on a few faces, but there is no sadness in it, only the quiet ache of distance, softened by love. Someone begins to hum a tune, low and slow. It might be a lullaby, or perhaps something learned long ago on a gray English coast. The melody drifts through the willows, mingling with the rustle of leaves. It's haunting but gentle, like a memory you can almost reach, but never quite touch. You close your eyes and let the sound wash over you. The wind picks up slightly, teasing the water into ripples. The willows bend, their long arms brushing against one another with a whispering sigh. A letter slips from someone's lap and drifts toward the river. You move to catch it, but it lands softly on the surface and floats, the inked words blurring into reflections. For a moment, you watch it turn slowly, carried downstream, a message to the horizon. Perhaps the river, too, deserves to know what home feels like. Evening slides in quietly. The sun melts into amber light that clings to the edges of the trees. Smoke from the kettle's fire coils upward, catching the last rays like a silver ribbon. The settlers begin to rise, stretching, their movements slow and content. Someone laughs softly at a memory written in a letter, something about a stubborn cow or a neighbor's wedding, and the sound lingers pleasantly in the air. You remain for a while longer, sitting under the willow's green canopy. The branches sway above you, heavy with shadows, and you can feel the ground cool beneath your palms. The world smells of damp grass and distant wood smoke. A dragonfly hovers near your knee, its wings flickering like thin sheets of glass. It stays there for a heartbeat before darting away into the deepening dusk. You think of the letters, folded and kept close, and how their words will be read again and again, not for their news, but for the way they bridge the vast space between here and home. In their ink lies the hum of connection, a reminder that even across oceans, people remain tethered by small, steady acts of remembrance. The first stars begin to appear, faint as candle flames behind a veil of mist. The willows shimmer in that pale light, their branches moving as though breathing. You rise slowly, brushing dirt from your hands, and take one last look at the river. Its surface mirrors both sky and tree, a seamless blend of above and below. Somewhere downstream, perhaps that lost letter still floats, carrying its blurred words into the night. You smile, thinking perhaps the colony truly shines in the dark, not with fire or magic, but with a gentle human glow of hope. It flickers quietly beneath the willow trees, enduring long after the letters are folded, long after the last light fades from the river, a soft, persistent warmth that lingers in the hearts of those who build dream and wait for tomorrow. The day drifts slowly toward its close, like honey sliding down the rim of a cup. The sun fades behind the rooftops, and the air carries a faint sweetness, part beeswax, part wood smoke, part something older, softer, that feels like memory itself. Inside the candlemaker's small workshop, the glow begins to bloom. It starts with one flame, then another, until the room flickers alive with light that seems to breathe. The wooden tables are worn smooth by time and touch. Bowls of wax sit in neat rows, their pale surfaces reflecting the shimmer of the fire. Strands of wick hang drying from beams above, gently swaying with the motion of the air. You can hear the low hum of quiet work, not chatter, not haste, just the slow rhythm of hands that know their task. The dip of a ladle, the pour of melted wax, the faint crackle of the hearth. Outside, the evening air is cool, but in here the warmth lingers like a soft embrace. The scent of tallow and honey mingles with dried herbs that hang from the rafters, lavender, thyme, a sprig of rosemary wrapped in twine. The light glows golden on the faces of those working, their eyes calm, their movements steady. There's comfort in repetition, in the way each candle rises from liquid to solid, from motion to stillness. This was one of the first crafts to truly flourish in the colonies. Candles were not only a necessity, but a quiet form of beauty, a symbol of care. Every household needed them. Every evening depended on their light. The settlers learned quickly that different waxes burned differently. Beeswax giving a cleaner flame, tallow more smoky, but easy to find. In Jamestown and beyond, the art of candle making became a rhythm of life itself, a humble industry that carried both warmth and light into the long nights of the New World. You step closer to the workbench, where the wax cools in rows of tin molds. The candle maker lifts one carefully, tapping the side with a wooden spoon. The sound is soft, like a heartbeat under layers of calm. As the mold releases, a new candle emerges, smooth, pale, and slightly translucent, as though it holds a secret glow of its own. There is a curious story, whispered among the settlers, of a small batch of candles that burned brighter than any others. They say it happened one autumn, when the nights grew colder and the river froze at its edges. 3 candles, made from the same wax and wick as the rest, refused to dim. For 3 nights they burned, unwavering, unmelting, their flames steady even in the draught of the open window. The candlemaker kept watch, certain it was the trick of the eye, but even he could not explain it. Some said the wax had absorbed the sunlight of that year's harvest, or that the river wind had carried a blessing from faraway shores. Others thought it was the work of faith, or fate, or something in between. Maybe, one settler murmured, the candles themselves simply wished to stay awake. You imagine those 3 lights, glowing in the darkness of a wooden house by the water. The night outside deep and endless, but within, the walls painted gold by a steadfast flame. There is something comforting in the thought that even the smallest light might sometimes decide to linger a little longer. The candlemaker's hands are streaked with wax. He moves slowly, with a grace that comes from years of repetition. He hums as he works, a low, tuneless melody that winds between the sounds of the room. Each motion feels like part of a ritual. Pour, cool, release, trim, tie. Wax drips onto the table and hardens like frozen honey. The smell of beeswax deepens, rich and sweet. In one corner, a row of finished candles stands ready for the morrow's trade. Their shapes catch the light like small columns of amber. The air flickers gently, and shadows dance along the walls, slow, graceful movements that make the wooden boards seem alive. You can almost hear the whisper of the flame, the faint sigh as the wick bends toward the wax. Through the open window, a breeze drifts in from the river. It stirs the flame just enough to make it tremble, but not fade. The room breathes with it. The light sways, the herbs rustle, and the scent of wax shifts ever so slightly. Time feels different here. The world outside fades, and all that remains is the steady glow of work done with care. It's easy to see why the settlers came to love candlelight so deeply. It wasn't only for seeing in the dark. It was for feeling at home within it. Under the wavering light, faces softened, words grew slower, thoughts gentler. Candlelight turned every rough surface tender, every shadow poetic. Even now, you can sense the quiet reverence that filled rooms like this one, the hush before evening prayers, the last murmur of a story shared before sleep. You reach out and cup your hands near the flame, feeling its warmth without touching. The light plays across your skin, gold and alive. It flickers across the wooden beams, along the jars of wax, across the candlemaker's face. There is something eternal in that dance, as if every flame ever lit carries within it a spark of the first one, the one that taught people to gather close, to share warmth against the night. The hour deepens. The candlemaker sets aside his tools and wipes his hands on a linen cloth. He places one finished candle on the window ledge and watches the flame sway gently in the darkening air. Outside, the settlement grows quiet. You can see faint glows from neighboring houses, small constellations of gold in the deep blue evening. For a moment, the whole world seems made of light and breath. You listen to the faint hum of the wax cooling, to the distant sound of the river, to the invisible thread that ties all these quiet moments together, the pulse of life at peace with itself. And there on the windowsill, the candle burns on, patient, unwavering, its glow stretching across the night, a soft echo of every hand that ever shaped it, every heart that ever found comfort in its light. The morning unfolds with a hush older than sound itself. Mist curls low across the earth, each breath carrying the faint taste of moss and dew. A narrow path winds ahead, soft and uneven beneath your steps, alive with subtle motion. Around you, the forest stretches endlessly, a cathedral of green and gold. Branches overhead weave together like the ribs of an ancient ship, guiding you forward through the slow tide of time. You move with a small party, 6 settlers in all, each step quiet, each glance filled with muted wonder. Words are few. The forest speaks in its own language. The wind threads through leaves like silk brushing skin. Birds call in distant, measured notes, as if mapping the edges of this unfamiliar world. Somewhere ahead, water drips steadily, marking a gentle, untimed rhythm that complements the morning's calm. Beyond Jamestown, the land waits patiently, untouched until explorers first arrived. In 1608, small parties ventured outward, seeking new rivers, hills, and resources. They followed old game trails, paths carved by deer, and the memory of travelers long gone. Here, they found not only beauty, but a quiet so immense it folds the mind inward and outward simultaneously. You pause beside a fallen tree, its wide trunk slick with moss and smooth with age. Tiny mushrooms bloom along its surface like fragile umbrellas after rain. Running your fingers across the bark, it feels cool, damp, almost alive. The air carries the scent of pine and earth, faintly sweet beneath, like a memory of summer fruit. A squirrel darts across the trail, pauses, then vanishes into ferns. Somewhere deeper, a branch cracks once, echoing like a whisper that refuses to fade. The group exchanges glances, not of fear, but of alert awareness. This world is vast, untamed, and it watches back, patient, curious, and unyielding in its silent presence. You continue walking. The path dips into a hollow where sunlight filters through thin layers of mist. It pools around the roots like spilled milk. The settlers slow their pace, their breaths visible in the cool air. One of them hums softly, not a tune anyone knows, just a drifting line of sound to keep company with the silence. Sometimes, in places like this, they say the forest hums back. The settlers wrote about strange noises, distant songs, soft choruses that floated through the trees with no clear source. Some historians still debate whether those lights were natural or spiritual. They meant the glows too, the faint orbs that wandered between trunks on windless nights. The journals describe them gently, without fear, just wonder, a faint bluish shimmer, like moonlight caught in a drop of water. The men who saw it said it moved slowly, hovering above the ground, flickering as if breathing. No sound, no smoke, only that light. A few followed it, though none could reach it. By morning, there was no trace. Later generations would call them Yule-o' the Wisps, or foxfire. But in those early years, they were simply forest lights, reminders that even the earth itself seemed to hold a quiet kind of mystery. You imagine it now, standing still beneath the trees, your breath held, your lantern dim, watching a soft glow float past like a dream you're not meant to chase. The forest stretches on. Ferns brush your legs. Every few steps, you hear the crunch of twigs, the murmur of leaves shifting high above. The settlers mark the trees with small cuts from their knives, a breadcrumb trail of safety. You can almost feel their curiosity, a mix of awe and determination, tempered with the simple need to survive. The deeper they go, the more the forest seems to breathe around them, as though aware of their presence, as though weighing them gently and finding them not unworthy. The leader, a man with a weathered hat and calm eyes, kneels beside a stream. He touches the water, clear and cold as glass. Fish dart beneath the surface, silver threads flashing through the dark. He dips his hand, drinks, and smiles faintly. "Good," he murmurs. "This will do." And so the forest, vast as it is, becomes a little smaller, a little more known. You rest beneath a tall pine. Its needles shimmer faintly in the light, each one catching a glint of gold from the afternoon sun. The air feels slower here, heavier in the best way, as if the world is in no hurry to move forward. Somewhere nearby, someone laughs softly. It's not the loud, raucous laughter of cities or taverns, but the gentle kind that belongs to shared peace. A deer steps into view, its coat glowing faintly in the dappled light. It pauses, lifts its head, and stares straight toward you. For a breath, the forest holds still. No wind, no sound, only that gaze. Then it turns and vanishes, silent as mist. One of the settlers exhales quietly, as though letting go of a thought that had been waiting too long. The group gathers samples, bits of bark, herbs, stones that glitter faintly with quartz. Every discovery feels small and immense at once. When they turn back toward Jamestown, the forest watches in silence, the breeze returning to its whisper, the shadows stretching long and soft. You walk last, trailing behind. The air shifts as you pass, the scent of damp leaves rising up around you. You can hear the rhythm of your steps, crunch, pause, breath, and it feels almost like music. The path seems to close behind you, branches leaning in, leaves brushing together like hands waving farewell. When the settlement's clearing finally opens ahead, the world feels brighter, but you can't help glancing back. Between the trees, for just a moment, something glows, faint, blue, pulsing softly as if alive. You blink, and it's gone. Maybe it was only the light, or maybe not. You smile to yourself, unwilling to decide. The day wanes. The explorers return to their fires, their voices low, their faces warm in the evening glow. Someone mentions the lights again, half in jest, half in wonder. The candle flames flicker as if listening. The forest hums in the distance, patient and eternal. And as the night deepens, you can almost hear it, a soft echo through the trees, the whisper of leaves, and stars, reminding you that even silence has stories to tell. Evening settles slowly, as if the world itself has decided to exhale. The forest quiets, the air cools, and Jamestown begins to glow with 100 soft fires, each one breathing gently against the dusk. You walk through the small clearing, the sky washed with lavender and ash. Wooden chimneys release thin ribbons of smoke that drift lazily into the wind, carrying with them the scent of earth, spice, and something faintly sweet, a mystery wrapped in warmth dot inside one of the newly built cabins the settlers gather. It is not grand, just sturdy and sure. Walls of pine logs, a thatched roof, and the kind of silence that hums with safety. The heart of it all is the hearth, a rough stone enclosure, glowing like a secret sun. The fire within snaps and sighs, tiny embers spiraling upward like stars, that decided not to leave the ground. You can almost feel the air shift around it, a low pulse of life. Steady and calm. This is the first communal kitchen of the settlement, built when the settlers realized that warmth and food, like courage, are best shared. Historical notes from those early years describe the joint hearth as both a necessity and a symbol. The moment Jamestown began to feel less like an outpost and more like home. The walls carry stories already, though only days old. A carved spoon hangs by the window. A kettle simmers. The scent of cornmeal porridge mingles with wood smoke and laughter. Someone stirs the pot, slow and patient. The ladle creaks against the iron rim. Outside, the crickets begin their song, measured and unhurried, like a lullaby for those still awake. You find a seat near the fire. The heat touches your face gently, a reminder that comfort can exist even at the edge of the world. A woman hums a tune, something without words, shaped by rhythm and memory. The flame flickers in response, as though swaying to her melody. You notice how the light clings to everything: the wooden table, the woven baskets, the lines on tired faces. Each glow feels earned, like the world rewarding stillness after long labor. The smoke curls upward through a gap in the roof, carrying its perfume into the night. Someone once wrote in a diary that the smoke of these fires had a sweet scent unlike any known in England. Scholars still wonder if it was from the native wood, or perhaps the herbs that settlers unknowingly burned among their kindling. Whatever it was, the scent lingered, in hair, in clothes, in memory. Outside, the moon has risen, pale and round. Its light seeps through the cracks between logs, a cool contrast to the fire's warmth. The night smells of pine resin and baked corn. From a distance, you can see the faint outlines of other cabins, each with its own plume of smoke, each with its own heartbeat of orange light. The town, small as it is, looks alive, a constellation on earth stitched together by warmth. A man sits near the hearth, carving something from a block of oak. The shavings curl at his feet like petals. He pauses to blow dust from his hands, then smiles faintly. He isn't carving for necessity, just for the pleasure of creating. The settlers have learned that survival is not only about endurance, but also about finding beauty in repetition, in craft. In moments when the world asks for nothing but quiet persistence, you can hear the low murmur of voices, soft, intimate, like waves on a still shore. They speak of home, of England, of the sky that never seemed so large until now. Someone jokes about missing the sound of church bells. Another laughs and says the crickets will have to do. The laughter fades into comfortable silence. The fire crackles approvingly, tossing sparks that dance for a heartbeat before vanishing into the dark dot. It is said that the first shared hearths of Jamestown marked a turning point when isolation became community. The settlers, once strangers bound only by survival, began to find rhythm in their routines. They cooked together, mended clothes, shared what they had. The flicker of each flame was a small promise. That warmth, once created, could be multiplied. You glance toward the roof and watch the smoke drift upward. It swirls in lazy spirals, leaving faint trails against the low rafters. If you breathe deeply, you can taste it, woody, rich, with that same sweetness the old diary described. Some claim that on nights like this, when the wind was just right, the smoke from Jamestown carried as far as the riverbank, where travelers said it smelled not of fire, but of sugar. No one ever discovered why. Someone adds another log to the fire. The room glows deeper, the shadows softening like fabric. You feel the heat against your hands, steady and kind. The crackling becomes a rhythm, soothing in its predictability. Every pop and sigh of the fire feels like a sentence in a long, gentle story. Outside, the breeze moves through the tall grass, carrying whispers of the river. The moonlight glints on the window pane, softening the edges of the world. Inside, the air hums with contentment. The settlers rest, some nodding off beside the hearth, their faces calm in the amber light. You can almost hear their dreams. Quiet things, shaped like fields and family, like mornings that will come without hurry. The fire settles into a slow burn, its glow now deep and steady. The coals pulse with life, breathing light into the room, even as the night thickens. You sit and listen to the wind brushing the roof, to the faint sound of waves in the distance, to the lullaby of a world being built by gentle hands. And in that soft space between sound and silence, you realize something simple. The heart of a settlement is not the fort or the field, but the warmth shared around the hearth, the quiet courage found in tending a flame. You close your eyes, breathing in that strange, sweet smoke, and feel the story of Jamestown wrap around you like a quilt made of light and ash. The night leans gently against the edge of the world, and the sea answers with its oldest voice. You stand on the shore, the sand cool beneath your boots, the wind brushing softly against your hair. The ocean stretches wide and endless, its dark surface rippling with silver light. The moon hangs above, round and unhurried, spilling its glow across the waves until the whole horizon shimmers like a dream. Half-remembered, each wave arrives with a patient rhythm, rolling toward you and sighing back again, as if the world itself is breathing in its sleep. The sound is constant, but never loud, a steady whisper, a lullaby meant for sailors, settlers, and anyone who has ever waited for dawn. You listen. The ocean speaks in languages older than words, telling stories of distance and return, of things lost and found. You imagine the first settlers who stood here years before, watching ships vanish into that same horizon. In those early days, when Jamestown still smelled of wet wood and hope, the sea was their only thread to the world they had left behind. It carried letters, grain, spices, and rumors. It carried promises and doubts, wrapped together in salt and mist by 1610. The route between England and Virginia had become steady, a fragile line of sails and courage stretching across the Atlantic. Ships came and went, their wooden hulls groaning softly like creatures that knew both longing and loyalty. Each arrival brought life, barrels of ale, bolts of cloth, crates of seed, and sometimes, just sometimes, news from home. The settlers would gather by the river when word spread that a ship was near. They'd squint toward the water, hearts lifting at the sight of a white sail against the blue. It meant food. It meant connection. It meant that the small lights of Jamestown were still visible from the other side of the ocean. You could almost see them, men waving, women clutching shawls against the breeze, children pointing at the horizon with eyes full of wonder. The tide continues its slow song. Each ripple reflects the moon like 1,000 tiny mirrors. The scent of salt lingers in the air, sharp yet soothing. Driftwood lies scattered along the beach, worn smooth by time and tide. You pick one up. It feels soft, as though the sea has been polishing it for years. The waves reach for your feet, cold and playful, before slipping away again. Somewhere far out to sea, a gull calls once, its voice faint but clear. The sound drifts over the water like a thread of memory. You think about the sailors who rode these waves, their hands calloused, their hearts divided between two worlds. For months they lived with nothing but sky and sea, guided by stars, haunted by calm. They trusted the tides more than they trusted maps. Not all voyages reach their intended destination. One story lingers through the years, of a ship that sailed from Virginia to England and vanished without a trace. Its name appeared briefly in the records, then faded, as if the sea itself had claimed it. The ship departed under a gentle wind, crew healthy, cargo secured. Days passed, then weeks, yet no word arrived. No wreckage surfaced, no message washed ashore. It disappeared as quietly as breath on glass. Some whispered it had sailed into an unseen storm. Others imagined it wandering south to find another shore, beginning a story unknown to those left behind. The ocean offered no answers, maintaining its steady rhythm, as if such mysteries belonged to its design. You stand listening, feeling the surf merge with your pulse, until the two seem inseparable. The moon rises, casting silver across the sand, turning each ripple into a luminous path. You follow the shoreline, steps slow and deliberate, letting your thoughts stretch and drift with the tide, carried gently by the unseen hand of the sea. Behind you, the faint lights of Jamestown flicker, small embers in the vast dark. Ahead, only the open sea. The settlers once wrote that standing at the shore made them feel both infinite and small, as if they were pieces of a story much larger than themselves. You understand it now. The world feels wide, but not lonely, filled with the quiet company of things that endure. You sit on a piece of driftwood and close your eyes. The breeze moves across your skin, cool and kind. You can hear everything, the slow collapse of each wave, the distant hum of insects from the marsh, the soft rustle of reeds. Every sound folds into the next until it becomes a single note, long, low, and peaceful. If you listen closely, you might even hear the faint creak of ropes and masts far out at sea, as if some invisible ship still moves under moonlight, carrying with it all the songs and secrets of those who came before. Perhaps it's the lost ship, still traveling, still unburdened by time. Or perhaps it's only the imagination playing tricks, as it does when the night is too gentle to argue. You open your eyes. The world is silver now. Even your hands seem to glow in the moonlight. The tide draws nearer, brushing the hem of your coat, leaving little beads of water like jewels on the fabric. You smile. The ocean feels endless, but somehow it also feels familiar, like a friend who never speaks loudly, but always listens. You breathe in the salt air once more, deep and unhurried. The sea answers with another sigh, slow and forgiving. It has seen everything, the arrivals, the departures, the promises, carried on wind and wave. And still, it moves at its own pace, never hurried, never cruel. Just steady, eternal, softly alive. You watch the horizon until it blurs with sleep. The sound of the tide becomes the heartbeat of the world, the rhythm of rest. The lost ship drifts somewhere in that sound, not gone, just unseen. Another reminder that not every mystery needs to be solved, and not every journey needs an end dot, and as the waves continue their patient song, you let yourself drift too, weightless, peaceful, wrapped in the ocean's lullaby. The morning begins with mist. It curls softly along the banks of the James River, veiling the wooden docks in a thin white hush. The air smells faintly of damp rope, pine tar, and distant rain. On the far side of the river, a ship rests quietly at anchor, its sails furled, its crew moving like silhouettes through the fog. A soft bell rings from the deck, and with that sound, the settlement stirs to life. For the people of Jamestown, these mornings always carry a sense of waiting. Every ship that arrives from across the ocean is more than a vessel. It's a messenger of time itself. In its cargo hold are spices, glass, candles, and paper, but hidden among the crates are the most precious things of all, letters. The letters arrive in small bundles, tied with frayed ribbon or rough string, their edges softened by salt and distance. Some are written in elegant cursive, others in hurried, uneven lines. A few smell faintly of lavender, others of smoke or candle wax. When the settlers gather around to receive them, there's a reverent quiet, as if each folded piece of paper holds a heartbeat from another world. The first colonial postal routes began to form in those years, fragile and uncertain, like everything else in this new land. Couriers rode between the settlements on horseback, through fields and forest, carrying pouches of news. Then the ships took them across the wide Atlantic, through storms and seasons. Guided by the invisible pulse of ocean currents, sometimes the mail arrived in good order, and sometimes it didn't. There were months when nothing came. No word from home. No word from London. Only the long silence of sea and sky. Then suddenly, a captain would appear with a leather chest filled with letters, and the settlement would bloom again with murmured joy. People would hold the pages close, eyes shining, lips trembling. You imagine one such morning. A young woman named Anne stands near the fort, a shawl drawn tight around her shoulders. Her husband hands her a letter, the paper thin and yellowed. She traces her fingers over the familiar handwriting before unfolding it. Inside, her sister writes about a spring in England, the hedgerows blooming early that year, the orchard full of bees. She speaks of rain that falls softly on old rooftops, of church bells ringing in the distance. Anne closes her eyes. For a moment, she is there again, walking barefoot through the damp grass of her childhood home. The words on the page become a bridge between worlds, one built not of wood or stone, but of ink and longing. All around her, others are reading too. Some smile faintly. Some cry quietly. Others simply sit and stare at the river, holding their letters like fragile relics of another life. The parchment glows pale in the morning light, and the faint smell of the sea lingers on each sheet, as if the waves themselves have kissed the paper. Historians later recorded that the first organized transatlantic mail system between the colonies and Europe emerged around this time. It was irregular, of course, governed more by weather and chance than by schedule, but it was a lifeline nonetheless. Each letter took months to arrive, if it arrived at all. Some never did, and then there were the strange ones. Among the settlers' stories is a curious tale of a letter that arrived more than 10 years after it was sent. The paper was brittle, the ink almost faded. No one could quite remember who had written it, or to whom it was meant to go. It was found in the hold of an abandoned ship discovered off the coast of Bermuda, dry and intact, though everything else on board had long succumbed to time. The letter spoke of good health, of harvests of hope, as though frozen in a moment that had drifted free of years. No one ever discovered how it survived, or who was meant to read it. Yet someone copied its words and brought them to Jamestown, where they were read aloud by candlelight. And for a few minutes, those gathered around the flame felt as though they were hearing a voice not from the past or the present, but from somewhere softer, a place beyond both. The settlers began keeping small chests for their correspondence, boxes lined with linen and cedar shavings to protect against damp. At night, after the day's work was done, they'd unfold their letters once more. Some traced the words with their fingertips. Others read them aloud in whispers, as if afraid to break the spell. The sound of ink on paper, of breath and memory, became part of the colony's rhythm. Even now, centuries later, it's easy to imagine those quiet moments, the flicker of a candle, the scratch of a quill, the scent of sealing wax melting slowly in a spoon. Outside, crickets sing, the river murmurs. Inside, the ink dries on another page that will one day cross an ocean. You picture one letter being written now. My dearest, the mornings here are pale and gentle. The birds wake before the sun, and the river speaks in whispers. I think of home often, of your voice, and the sound of the rain on our old windows. The world feels so large now, but still, you are close. The writer seals it with wax, presses a ring into the surface, and sets it aside. Tomorrow, a sailor will carry it down to the docks, and the ocean will take it from there, folding it into its endless rhythm. Perhaps it will arrive months later, perhaps years, or perhaps, Like that other letter, it will wander until the world forgets who sent it. But even so, it will exist, floating quietly through time. A message from one heartbeat to another, and as the mist lifts from the river, you can almost see those letters drifting, two thin, pale birds made of paper, crossing the sea in silence, carrying the weight of love, memory, and patience. Because sometimes, even across oceans and centuries, words still find their way home. Morning rises softly over the settlement, slow and silvery. A thin mist drifts above the fields, carrying with it the smell of dew and wood smoke. From somewhere beyond the trees, a sound emerges, faint at first, then clearer, round and pure. It is the bell of the meeting house, ringing through the quiet dawn. The note lingers in the air like breath on glass, delicate and steady, calling people gently from their homes. The sound is not urgent. It never is. It's a kind of invitation, not to duty, but to peace. One by one, doors open. Cloaks are fastened. Candles are cupped against the wind. And soft footsteps begin to gather along the dirt path that leads to the small wooden building at the heart of Jamestown. The first meeting house of Virginia was raised with hands, more familiar with farming than carpentry, yet every beam holds care. The walls are plain, the windows narrow, the benches uneven, but when the light passes through them, it feels as though the room breathes. The settlers built it as a place not only for prayer, but for gathering, deciding, sharing news, and remembering who they were. Inside, the air smells of pine resin and tallow candles. Wax drips slowly onto wooden tables, pooling in small golden circles. The people sit in calm silence, the soft creak of the benches blending with the sigh of the wind through the cracks in the wall. A few heads bow. Some close their eyes. Others simply watch the candlelight flicker across the rough timbers, their thoughts far and gentle. Outside, the bell continues to ring, each tone fading into the mist. It had been brought from England years earlier, packed carefully in straw and cloth, and it was said that the ship carrying it sailed through 3 storms without losing a single rope. The settlers saw that as a sign that the sound of home would endure, even here in this strange and fertile world. But there was something else about that bell. From the earliest days, people spoke of hearing it when no one was near the rope. Sometimes late at night, when the fog pressed close around the meeting house, a soft chime would echo across the empty fields. The guards at the fort would turn their heads, unsure whether it was real or imagined. And when morning came, the rope would be still, the bell unmoved. Some said it was the wind, others a trick of the river. But a few whispered that perhaps the sound was a memory of prayer, an echo of all the voices that had gathered there, woven together into something that never quite faded. You picture it now, the soft silhouettes of the settlers, seated close together, their breath visible in the cool morning air. A man reads slowly from a worn Bible, his voice low and kind. A child rests her head against her mother's shoulder. Someone hums a hymn, the tune barely above a whisper. Outside, the mist curls around the windows, and the bell gives one last, fading tone. There is no hurry here. Time feels different within these walls, stretched and gentle. The meeting house exists as a pause between the labor of the fields and the long quiet of night, a still point in a world always shifting. Even the fire in the hearth seems to slow its burn, smoke rising in thin ribbons that catch the morning light like delicate threads of silk. You can almost hear the words of a settler. Long ago, we meet not to command, but to remember what binds us. Within this simple room, laws were spoken, harvest plans laid, marriages quietly announced. Each gathering stitched together the small, fragile hope of the colony, week by week, breath by breath. Here, in the hush of wood and warmth, the ordinary became sacred. The low murmur of voices, the scent of pine smoke, the sunlight across worn floorboards. All were reminders that even in the wildest of places, community endures. Each meeting renewed the sense that, despite uncertainty, the colony's heart beat steadily, quietly, and with purpose. As the gathering ends, the people linger. Some stay behind to tidy the benches, to refill the oil lamps, to share a loaf of bread or a story from home. The bell rope sways gently by the door, brushed by a passing breeze. A woman touches it lightly, as though greeting an old friend. Later, when everyone has gone and the sun has climbed high enough to burn the mist away, the meeting house stands quiet again. Dust dances in the golden light. The floorboards creak as the day warms. And then, faintly, barely more than a sigh, the bell rings once. It is a sound so delicate that it startles no one, yet so complete it cannot be mistaken for accident. A single note rises and falls over the empty fields, carried on the breeze and in memory. No one is present to hear it, and yet, if you listen closely, through the layers of time, perhaps you might catch it too. It is the sound of a place that has learned what it means to be at peace. A sound that reminds you that community needs no grand gestures to endure. It thrives on kindness, shared quiet, and the steady rhythm of hearts moving together. There is a softness in it, a humility that speaks louder than words ever could. The settlers believed that when the bell rang without a hand to pull the rope, it was the land itself joining in prayer with them. And perhaps they were not wrong. There is a rhythm to faith, one that does not always demand attention, that does not always demand explanation. Even now, in a world bustling with noise and light, the faint echo of that ancient bell drifts unseen, tucked between the gentle flow of the river and the whisper of pines. It reminds us that faith, like sound, does not vanish. It merely softens, folding itself into the air, until it becomes inseparable from the quiet spaces around us. Afternoon light slips quietly through small square windows, painting thin gold bars across the wooden floor. Dust floats lazily in the beams, swirling and falling like sleepy snow. The air here carries the dry, sweet scent of paper and pine, the kind of smell that makes you breathe slower without realizing why. You find yourself inside a small library, tucked behind the meeting house, built not from grandeur, but from patience. The shelves are rough-hewn, uneven, and warm to the touch. Their corners have softened over time, as if smoothed by the quiet brushing of countless hands. A dozen or so volumes rest upon them, thick leather spines, some cracked, others still faintly gleaming. They are travelers in their own right, carried across the Atlantic in chests and barrels. Wrapped in cloth to protect them from salt and damp, these books were among the first to arrive in Virginia, part of the small but steady wave of thought that followed the settlers' footsteps. Alongside tools and seeds and nails, there came words, sermons, treatises, plays, and poems. A ship's manifest from 1620 listed 15 volumes of divinity, 4 of medicine, and 1 of astronomy. That single astronomy book, they said, contained a drawing of the stars that made sailors dream of navigation by, heaven's own map. You sit beside the window where a faint breeze moves the curtain. Its thin fabric, worn but clean, fluttering like a page trying to turn itself. The chair creaks as you settle. Outside, the fields hum with cicadas. Inside, the only sound is the faint crackle of a candle and the soft sigh of old wood adjusting to the sun. There's a kind of holiness here, not the loud, echoing holiness of cathedrals, but a small and steady one. The holiness of knowledge kept safe by human hands. You trace your finger along the edge of a book titled Of Gardens and Their Virtues, its letters pressed deep into the fading leather. Another bears the mark of a London printer, 1605. You wonder if its maker could have imagined his work resting centuries later in this quiet corner of a distant world. A record kept by an early settler. Mentions that this tiny collection was considered a treasure, guarded almost reverently. Books were expensive, rare, and fragile, yet they bridged the gap between wilderness and civilization. They connected the colony to the rhythm of thought across the ocean, a fragile tether of ink and imagination. But one book, in particular, drew attention. It was small, missing its cover, its pages stained by sea air and smoke. No one remembered how it arrived. Some claimed it was found in a barrel meant for flour. Others swore it appeared after a shipment from London, unlisted and unclaimed. Its handwriting was uneven, the ink darker than it should have been for its age. And inside, on the first page, was a signature, looping, elegant, but belonging to no known name. For years, people speculated. Was it a traveler's journal? A lost manuscript? A message hidden in plain sight? The librarian, a gentleman named Thomas Weaver, once said that the book seemed to hum softly when the wind turned east. He laughed after saying it, perhaps embarrassed. But he kept it locked in a small chest by the window nonetheless, as if its mystery deserved a bit of solitude. When the scholars from later generations visited Jamestown's remnants, they found fragments of that same story written in letters, mentions of a nameless book, a signature unclaimed. No one ever found it again. Maybe it fell to damp and time, or perhaps it traveled onward, tucked once more into someone's pocket or pack. The light through the window shifts, sliding slowly across the desk. You can almost imagine Thomas Weaver here, turning a page with careful fingers, his face lit in amber glow. He would read aloud sometimes, not for company, but to give the words air, letting them live again after their long silence at sea. The room would fill with the sound of his voice, the low hum of meaning rising like smoke. Outside, children might run past, their laughter muffled by distance, the faint tap of wooden shoes echoing on the path. Inside, a thought lingers, that even here, in a world built from earth and timber, ideas had already begun to take root. The settlers had come seeking land, but they found something else too, a hunger for continuity, for knowledge, for the stories that tethered them to home. Books were their quiet companions, their proof that humanity could still whisper even in the wilderness. In 1611, a journal tells of settlers gathered to hear English poetry read aloud. Outside, the wind howled, candles flickered, yet no one moved. When the reader paused, the silence felt sacred, as if the stars themselves had leaned closer to hear. You smile at the thought. Beside you, a candle burns low, tallow and paper mingling into something timeless. Eyes closed, you hear only the whisper of leaves and the ghostly rustle of a page turning. Perhaps the strange signature in that missing book was not meant to be solved. Perhaps it was only meant to remind us that every story, even one without a name, leaves an imprint, a trace that glows faintly through the years, like a lantern behind fogged glass. And in this quiet library, where light and shadow share the same gentle rhythm, knowledge does not shout or demand attention. It simply waits, like a friend sitting patiently by the window, ready to speak when you are ready to listen. The last of the sunlight fades, soft and amber. You look once more at the empty shelves, at the place where the mysterious book might have rested. Then you let your gaze drift to the window, where twilight gathers and the first fireflies rise. The air smells faintly of pine and candle smoke. It's peaceful here, you think. Words have found a home, and in their silence they hum, just enough to keep your mind warm, just enough to remind you that even in a world of raw beginnings, the quiet pursuit of knowledge was already a kind of love. Morning rises like a sigh over the Virginia countryside. The first light is soft and silver, brushing gently across the fields. You step out onto the narrow path, your boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. A thin veil of mist hangs low, curling around the tall leaves of tobacco plants, their edges still jeweled with dew. The air carries a sweetness, faint, earthy, and green, a scent that feels like memory. Here, in these quiet fields, the hum of life begins before the sun fully climbs. You hear the rustle of leaves, the distant chirp of waking birds, the slow drip of condensation from the eaves of a nearby barn. The workers move through the mist like ghosts, their shapes blurred, their motions steady and rhythmic. Tobacco, the golden leaf, the colony's first great crop, sways gently around them, whispering with each breath of wind. It was in Virginia that tobacco found its destiny. In the early 1600s, John Rolfe brought the seeds from the Caribbean, determined to make them thrive in this new soil. What began as an experiment soon became survival itself. The colony, once uncertain, now had something the world desired. The scent of dried leaves would soon travel across oceans, carrying with it the faint echo of these mornings, this fog, this patience, this endless work. You walk along the edge of the field. The mist is thicker here, swirling around your ankles, softening every line of the world. The tobacco plants stand shoulder high, their broad leaves glistening. When the light shifts, their color deepens, green turning almost gold at the tips. The workers speak little. They move with the rhythm of people who have long learned that silence can be companion enough. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rings once and fades into the mist. It feels less like a call and more like a breath, the land exhaling. You pause, watching the horizon brighten, the sun breaking through in slow, deliberate strokes. It feels as though time itself stretches here, expanding between heartbeats. The early settlers believed that the earth held moods, that some patches of soil had tempers or spirits that favored certain crops. One farmer, writing in 1624, claimed that a single acre near the river produced tobacco that refused to wither even when the rain forgot its duty. Others dismissed it as superstition. Yet year after year, that same acre yielded flawless leaves while others browned and curled. Even now, when the fields have changed hands in centuries, that story lingers. You imagine the scene, men standing knee-deep in mist, staring at a patch of impossibly green plants, the rest of the field faded and dry. They might have whispered prayers, or perhaps just marveled quietly, afraid to disturb the secret. The wind would have carried the scent, richer there, somehow, as if the earth itself exhaled through the roots. You kneel for a moment and run your hand over the soil. It's cool, dark, and alive. The grains stick lightly to your skin before falling away. There's a sense of gratitude here, not spoken, but felt, a bond between human effort and the land's quiet generosity. As the morning grows, the mist begins to lift. The workers hang bundles of harvested leaves from long wooden poles, the green turning slowly to bronze as they dry in the sunlight. The barns nearby breathe smoke, not fire, but the slow warmth that cures and preserves. You catch the scent of burning pine, faintly sweet and resinous, mingling with the sharp perfume of the leaves. The rhythm of the day unfolds in patience. No one rushes. No one lingers too long. The fields seem to dictate their own tempo. Even the birds, perched on the fences, move in slow, deliberate hops. It's as if the air itself were thicker, designed to hold every motion, just a moment longer before letting it fade. A man nearby hums softly, not a song you recognize, just a simple tune made of rising and falling notes. It sounds like the land speaking through him, a melody for those who work with the sun as their clock and the soil as their mirror. When noon approaches, the workers rest under the shade of an old oak. You join them, sitting on the cool grass, watching the world shimmer with heat. The tobacco leaves glisten under the sun now, their earlier softness replaced by a proud gleam. The mist has retreated to the horizon, a faint silver thread between the sky and the trees. You take a deep breath, and the air fills your chest with warmth and sweetness. For a moment, it feels like you could taste time itself, slow, fragrant, patient. Somewhere, you imagine, there is still that strange patch of land, the one that never lets its leaves wilt. Maybe it's nothing but a trick of shade and wind, or maybe the earth remembers kindness when it's shown. Either way, it's comforting to think that even soil has its mysteries, that not everything in life needs an explanation to be real. The afternoon light grows long and golden. A pair of crows glide low over the fields, their wings black against the pale sky. The sound of distant laughter drifts from a farmhouse, soft and fleeting. The scent of curing tobacco lingers on the air, rich and drowsy. As the sun dips lower, you watch the shadows stretch across the rows. The plants seem almost to bow, their tall leaves folding slightly, as if in gratitude for another day survived. The wind moves through them one last time, carrying whispers that sound almost like language. You turn back toward the path, the fields behind you glowing in the amber light. The mist that began the day has returned, faint and tender, curling once more around the edges of the earth. You smile at the symmetry of it, the way beginnings and endings often wear the same disguise. It's easy to imagine that somewhere beneath that soft fog, the land is still breathing gently, guarding its small miracles. And as you walk home, the smell of tobacco and pine follows you, warm, familiar, and endlessly calm. Night settles slowly over the colony, not with darkness, but with a soft hush, a kind of peace that seems to breathe between each flicker of light. Along the narrow streets of what would soon become Williamsburg, small oil lanterns sway gently from wooden posts and iron hooks, their flames trembling like whispers against the cool night air. The cobblestones gleam faintly with the reflection of those quiet lights, and the walls, brick, old timber, and limewash seem to absorb the glow and exhale it back in slow, uneven breaths. The evening feels weightless. Smoke rises from chimneys, thin and ghostly, dissolving into a sky where pale stars linger. Footsteps drift softly from unseen corners, settlers returning after a long day, boots muted by dust, voices low, contented. Doors close one by one, and the street exhales. Here, Williamsburg began to take shape. Wooden houses stood close, lanterns flickering like fireflies in glass. Traders packed their stalls. Blacksmiths quenched the final sparks, yet the town's rhythm stayed calm, steady. No rush disturbed the air, only the gentle pulse of a world learning to rest. Life moved with intention, measured and quiet, each small motion building a sense of home, of community, of enduring presence. You walk slowly down the lane, each step guided by the swaying glow. The air smells faintly of oil, clay, and night-blooming flowers that cling to the fences. Every few steps, the sound of crickets rises like a tide and then fades again, replaced by silence so complete it feels sacred. A lantern above your head flickers. The flame bends low, then steadies, as though nodding in quiet recognition. Inside one of the small houses, you glimpse the faint outline of a family at supper, their faces softened by candlelight. Steam curls from a pot. Shadows move like waves against the wall, and for a moment, everything in the world seems balanced perfectly between light and stillness. The settlers believed in the importance of light, not just for safety, but for companionship. Lanterns were not merely tools. They were quiet guardians of the dark. In the early records of Williamsburg, it is written that lanterns were placed at corners to comfort the traveler who knows not the way. Some were filled nightly with whale oil, others with rendered tallow, the smell strong but familiar. Not every light obeyed its keeper. A curious note from 1704 records lanterns that burned on after their oil was spent. One watchman described finding a flame alive the next morning, its glass cool, wick dry. "It burned as though breathing upon nothing," he wrote, "and I did not have the heart to quench it." No explanation followed. Perhaps a trick of dew, reflection, or weary eyes. Perhaps the town itself refused to sleep. You pause beneath one such lantern. The glass fogged with age, the metal cool beneath your fingers, its glow soft and golden, casting halos on the walls. The street curves gently out of sight. The darkness ahead is deep, calm, like water at rest. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once, then stills. A door creaks open. Faint laughter drifts out, mingling with the scent of bread and wood smoke. The sound feels eternal, the heartbeat of a town still learning to dream. Its light neither hurried nor fading, merely present, patient, and quietly alive. The architecture here holds its own kind of serenity. The eaves curve low, protecting doorways from the dew. Shutters rest half-closed like tired eyelids. The lanterns make the red brick glow with warmth, turning every house into a keeper of light. The streets are narrow but friendly, the kind of paths that invite you to wander without reason. You imagine how it must have felt in those first years, settlers walking home from the meeting house. Voices soft, the air scented with earth and beeswax. The lamps would have burned low, their glow marking the heart of a community still fragile yet hopeful. The same light that once guided weary travelers now seems to guide dreams. A few lanterns sway harder as the night wind stirs, casting their glow across doorframes and barrels stacked neatly by the walls. The reflections ripple like water, as though the whole street were floating on a quiet tide. You walk past a well, its rope hanging still, the wooden frame damp with mist. The sound of distant waves reaches faintly through the night, the memory of the sea that brought them here dot at the far end of the road stands the old watch post, its lantern larger, steadier, a beacon for those still awake. The guards rarely see danger. Instead, they sit by the glow, drinking weak ale and tracing constellations through the shifting smoke. Their murmurs fade in and out with the breeze, blending into the rhythm of crickets and sighing wood. You find a bench near the square and sit for a while, letting your thoughts wander. The lantern beside you flickers once, twice, then steadies again, its flame leaning toward you like a friend sharing secrets. The scent of warm oil lingers in the air, faintly metallic, faintly sweet. Around you, the town seems to hum with a presence too soft to name. Some say that late at night, when the mist drifts through Williamsburg, certain lanterns light themselves, tiny sparks appearing one by one, glowing without wick or oil. Perhaps they are echoes of the first lights ever lit here, or perhaps they are simply memories that refuse to fade. You look up and see one lantern farther down the street shimmer, brighter than the rest, steady and sure, untouched by wind. Its glow spreads slowly outward, painting the brick walls in a soft honey hue. For a moment, you could almost believe that the night itself has decided to stay awake, keeping watch over those who dream not, and so you sit in the gentle watch of the lanterns, their steady warmth a lullaby for the weary. The air cools, the stars sharpen, and the world folds itself into calm. In the soft breathing of the night, you feel the colony's heart, tender, patient, quietly alight. Morning returns softly, as if carried on the wings of a sigh. Dew glimmers on the grass, each drop a tiny world catching the first pale rays of light. Beyond the neat wooden fences, the gardens of the colonial town awaken, not with sound, but with scent. Lavender breathes its calm perfume into the air, mingling with the sweetness of white daisies and the cool, earthy sharpness of rosemary. The garden paths, still damp with dawn, curve gently beneath your steps like old parchment folded with care. Here, time seems to slow into stillness. The hum of bees rises and falls like a quiet hymn, and somewhere, a robin turns the soil with its beak, searching for the day's first meal. Every leaf, every petal, Every faint sound belongs to a rhythm older than memory, a language of patience that needs no words. It was in gardens like these that the settlers found a kind of peace, a gentle reprieve from the wilderness that surrounded them. The first English noble families who crossed the Atlantic brought with them not only furniture and books, but also seeds, delicate parcels of memory. Lavender from Kent, marigolds from Devon, mint from the gardens of Hampshire. These small tokens of home were tucked into chests and pockets, carried across the wide ocean, as if they might bring the comfort of England's green hills to this unfamiliar soil. When the first blooms opened in the Virginian sun, it must have felt like a promise kept. The soil, rich and generous, accepted each stranger seed without hesitation. And soon, among the rough cabins and muddy paths, colors began to appear, soft blues, pale yellows, the dusky purple of evening flowers. Gardens became sanctuaries, small pieces of order amid the raw expanse of the New World. You walk slowly along a row of lavender, brushing your fingertips against the blossoms. The scent clings to your skin, light but persistent, a perfume that feels almost like calm itself. Bees hover, dipping and vanishing in the haze of purple, their hum steady and unhurried. Beyond the fence, the town stirs faintly, the sound of a cart, the creak of a door, but here, the world remains suspended in tranquility. A gardener kneels nearby, his hands deep in the dark soil. He works silently, his motion steady, like a prayer made visible. Beside him, rosemary grows tall, its narrow leaves catching drops of dew that sparkle in the light. The herb was once a symbol of remembrance, and the settlers planted it near windows and doors, believing it would keep the mind clear and the spirit kind. Perhaps it did. Historical records tell of English noble families, the Birds, the Carters, the Lees, who tended gardens in the early colonial years, shaping their new estates after those of the English countryside. They imported bulbs and seeds from Europe, creating spaces where lilac, chamomile, and hollyhock grew beside the wild flora of Virginia. These gardens were not mere decoration. They were expressions of longing, the desire to root beauty in an unfamiliar world. And among all these cultivated places, one garden became the subject of quiet wonder. It was said to belong to a widow who lived near the edge of the settlement. Her garden, according to those who saw it, never ceased to bloom. Even in the coldest winters, when frost silvered every branch and the air itself seemed to sleep, flowers were seen nodding in her yard, fragile but alive. Some said she tended them with secrets learned from the Powhatan. Others whispered that her husband, lost at sea, still watched over her, keeping the soil warm beneath the snow. Whatever the truth, no one ever found the trick. The flowers simply bloomed, season after season, year after year, until her cottage was gone and the path to it forgotten. You pause at the thought, gazing at a bed of daisies swaying gently in the morning air. Their white petals catch the sun like tiny mirrors, and for a moment, it seems entirely possible that a garden might hold its own quiet magic. The breeze moves through the hedgerows, carrying the scent of mint and the soft rustle of leaves. The air feels almost alive, textured with warmth and fragrance. Somewhere nearby, a fountain trickles lazily, the sound blending with birdsong and the whisper of grass. It is not music, but something slower, deeper, the world humming its own lullaby. You sit on a stone bench shaded by an old pear tree. Its branches hang low, heavy with small green fruit. A few petals drift down from a nearby rosebush, landing softly in your lap. The petals are cool to the touch, their edges curling slightly, as if shaped by sleep. The settlers often said that tending a garden was a way of tending the soul. Amid the toil and uncertainty of the colonies, these small plots became places of solace, reminders that beauty could take root anywhere. The gardens grew not just from earth and seed, but from longing, memory. and the quiet faith that life continues to bloom even when the world feels uncertain. You close your eyes and breathe in deeply the mingled perfume of soil, herbs, and sunlight. The scent carries a sense of stillness, as though the garden itself were breathing with you. The bees hum again, circling lazily, their golden bodies glinting in the light. The air grows warmer. Shadows shorten. The flowers tilt gently toward the sun, unhurried, serene. Somewhere, a chime rings from a distant porch, a thin, clear note that melts into the quiet. The moment stretches, unbroken, like silk between fingers. Perhaps that is the garden's true secret, not magic, but patience. The quiet devotion to nurture, to watch, to let the earth unfold at its own slow pace. In this way, life continues, steady and enduring. As you turn to leave, a soft wind stirs through lavender, daisies, and rosemary. Their scent trails behind you, gentle and insistent, a calm that lingers, persistent and endless, carrying the garden's quiet rhythm with every step you take down the winding path. The afternoon sun filters softly through a high, narrow window, painting golden lines across a wooden table. The air inside the small workshop is still, touched only by the faint scent of oil and brass. And then a sound begins, almost shy at first. Tick, tick, tick. The rhythm settles into the quiet like a heartbeat, even, calm, patient. You listen to it as if it were breathing, the steady pulse of time itself, enclosed within a tiny brass shell. You stand near the workbench, watching as the timekeeper bends over his craft. His hands move slowly, deliberate as a prayer. Every motion seems to have meaning. A turn of a screw, the gentle placement of a gear, the soft whisper of a brush, sweeping away a speck of dust. He does not rush. Time, after all, is his companion, not his master. Light pools on the brass surfaces, casting reflections that tremble with each movement. When the first mechanical clocks arrived in the colonies, they were wonders of patience and precision. Each piece, shipped from London, carried within it not only the mechanics of time, but also the spirit of craftsmanship. The settlers gathered around these ticking marvels, their faces lit by fascination. To measure hours in a world still ruled by sunrise and moonlight felt like taming something wild. Soon, some began to master the delicate art of giving motion meaning. They became the colony's timekeepers, crafting clocks from imported brass, rough oak, and stray iron. In a land where days stretched uncertainly, their work offered rhythm. This is morning, this is evening, and in between. Life unfolds. Before you, a man tends one such clock. Its pale wooden case is worn smooth by years of touch. The pendulum swings steadily, mirrored in his calm gaze. He hums a quiet, nameless tune, a habit of solitude. Tools glint on the table, tiny screwdrivers, tweezers, files etched with devotion. Each tick fills the room softly, a mesmerizing pulse. The air itself seems to breathe in time, carrying the quiet, steadfast heartbeat of patience and craft. Outside, the town hums in distant motion. Horses clop on the cobbled path, and the faint chatter of neighbors drifts through the open door. Yet within these wooden walls, there is only stillness. The world pauses here, waiting for the next moment to be wound out. It was around this time. Historical accounts tell us that the first mechanical clocks appeared in the Virginia colonies, imports from England, gifted to governors or placed within meeting houses. These clocks did more than measure hours. They anchored communities. The toll of a bell, the chime of an hour, such sounds reminded people of order, of connection, of life's shared rhythm. Soon after, the art of repair began to spread. Men like the one before you became local legends, artisans who understood the mystery of gears and springs. They built not just devices, but continuity, holding time together in places where so much still felt uncertain dot, the man now lifts a tiny brass wheel with tweezers, placing it into the heart of the mechanism. The sound that follows, a faint click, feels almost sacred. You watch as he adjusts the pendulum and steps back. The rhythm steadies again, slow, confident. Tick dot 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 dot. Tick dot 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 tock. He smiles faintly. And you realize this work is not about control, but about harmony. Finding the right balance between weight and motion, between now and next. It's a kind of quiet meditation, one that turns seconds into something almost tender. In one corner of the workshop stands a larger clock, its surface darkened by age. It is said to have been among the first ever made in the colonies, crafted more than 2 centuries ago, and astonishingly, it still runs. The story goes that no one has wound it in generations, yet its pendulum continues to swing, faithful and tireless. Some claim it's a trick of craftsmanship. Others whisper of something deeper. Historians still debate whether it was luck, skill, or something more. The timekeeper glances at it occasionally, perhaps to reassure himself that such things are possible. The old clock's face glows in the dim light, its brass hands gleaming softly as they cross paths once more. A faint hum lingers in the air, not mechanical, but almost musical. Like a sigh caught between centuries, you imagine the settlers long ago hearing these same sounds, the tick, the tock, the steady lullaby of precision. Maybe the sound comforted them in the long nights when storms rattled the windows and the sea roared beyond the shore. Maybe they found in it the promise that no matter what changed, time itself would keep its gentle rhythm. A man wipes his hands on a cloth, his work for the evening nearly done. He leans close to the newly assembled clock, listening, eyes half closed. Then, satisfied, he places it on a shelf among others, each one ticking in its own quiet voice. The air seems filled with 1,000 tiny hearts, beating together in perfect peace. You find yourself breathing slower, matching their rhythm without realizing it. The workshop becomes a cocoon of sound, wrapping you in its gentle cadence. Every tick feels like an exhale. Every tock, a return to calm. He lights a candle, its flame trembling slightly as if in time with the ticking. The scent of wax mingles with that of oiled brass, warm and soothing. Shadows dance on the walls like passing seconds. Outside, the light fades. The horizon softens into lavender, and the evening hush spreads over the town. But within the wooden room, time continues, gentle, golden, endlessly patient. The man smiles, adjusting the pendulum one last time. There, he murmurs to himself, though you feel he speaks to the room, to the air, perhaps even to time itself. The clock answers with a steady pulse, a quiet affirmation that all is well. You leave the workshop slowly, the sound following you like a whisper. Tick dot 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 dot, tock dot, tick dot dot dot. The rhythm stays with you as you step into the twilight, a reminder that peace often lives in the smallest motions, the ones too patient to rush, too quiet to fade. The evening settles like a soft shawl over the colonial town, wrapping the wooden houses in gentle dusk. The last ribbons of daylight fade beyond the tree line, leaving behind only the hush of wind moving through the chimneys. You step inside a home built of pine and oak, its scent still carrying the faint sweetness of sap. The hearth glows in the center of the room, breathing warmth into the cool night. Shadows sway on the walls, and the air hums quietly with contentment. The family gathers close, parents, children, a grandmother who hums softly, her voice little more than a sigh. The fire crackles, embers shifting like tiny stars. Each face glows with amber light, soft and human and timeless. The rhythm of life slows here, and you can almost hear the sound of peace itself, a pulse, steady and kind, beneath the whispering wind. They share simple things. Bread baked that morning, still holding the ghost of warmth. A pot of stew fragrant with herbs from the garden, thyme, sage, and a sprig of rosemary. The clinking of wooden spoons becomes a kind of music, steady and familiar. No one speaks loudly. The room does not need noise to feel alive, not beyond the window. The night deepens. The forest hums, a low chorus of crickets and distant owls. The air outside is crisp, and you imagine frost beginning to form on the edges of the window pane. Inside, though, the warmth holds steady. Steady as memory. It is in evenings like these that a culture begins to breathe. Long before flags or maps, it is the hearth, this circle of warmth, that becomes the first true gathering place. Around it, people share not just food but stories. Tales of the ocean voyage, of the first houses, of kind neighbors and hard winters. The children listen with wide eyes, their faces flickering in the glow from such quiet gatherings. The first threads of identity are woven, not in proclamations or decrees, but in small, gentle rituals. A song hummed before sleep, the way bread is broken, the phrases that linger in a mother's lullaby. This is how belonging begins, soft and unhurried. Historical records tell us that by the early 1600s, small colonial communities had begun to shape their own customs, distinct from those of England. They spoke the same language, yet their accents changed. They planted familiar herbs, but cooked them in new ways. Even their songs began to shift, carrying echoes of the ocean winds and the rhythm of the New World. Tonight, in this imagined room, you feel the transformation quietly unfolding. A young woman sits near the fire, sewing by candlelight. The thread glints faintly as it passes through fabric, her movements measured and sure. A man at the corner hums an old tune from home, a song that once floated through London taverns and now lingers in this faraway wooden house. And here's the curious part, a mystery history never solved. That same lullaby, a traveler's journal notes, was heard the same night in another settlement nearly 50 miles away. 2 fires, 2 families, one tune drifting across the cold Virginia air. Some called it coincidence. Others whispered that perhaps the wind carried memories better than sound. Whatever the cause, it became known as the lullaby that traveled by moonlight. The grandmother by the fire pauses her humming, then begins to sing softly, low and tender. You don't know the words, but you feel the meaning, the way the melody wraps the room in calm. The children grow heavy-eyed. Even the fire seems to listen. The man by the fire stirs the embers, sending a slow shower of sparks upward. They rise, glow for a heartbeat, and fade. The smoke curls lazily toward the chimney, carrying with it the scent of pine and thyme. You imagine it drifting out into the cold, joining the sky, merging with the faint light of the stars. Outside, Williamsburg and Jamestown and the other small towns of the colonies begin to sleep. The roads are empty, but for a few lanterns swaying in the wind. Dogs settle near porches, chickens rest in coops, and somewhere, a lone owl calls into the night. The world exhales inside. The candlelight grows softer, as though aware of its own fragility. The wax melts slowly, tracing gentle rivers down its sides. A faint draft moves through the room, enough to make the flame dance, but not enough to chill the air. You look at the faces around the hearth, each one softened by the glow, each carrying stories older than words. Here, time feels patient. The rhythm of the clocks, the pulse of the fire, the hush of breath, all blend together into a single, seamless moment. The grandmother finishes her song, her final note fading into the sound of the wind. For a long moment, no one speaks. The children drift towards sleep, their heads resting on their mother's lap. The man smiles faintly and adds another log to the fire. The sparks leap again, briefly painting gold upon the wooden walls. Outside, clouds part for a moment, revealing the moon, round, silver, calm. Its light filters through the small window, touching the floor like silk. You can almost imagine the moon listening too, drawn by the quiet heartbeat of this little room. There is no grand history here, no clamor or conquest, only the patient shaping of life, in kitchens, in laughter, in lullabies that outlast their singers. History hums softly here, rather than shouts. You breathe in the warm, smoky air, wishing to linger in this gentle chamber of time, where everything moves at the speed of peace. The fire sighs as a log settles into coals. The grandmother leans back, eyes closed, while the clock ticks softly from the mantel, keeping steady time, and somewhere, faint but clear, you hear it, that same distant lullaby, drifting through the room and across centuries, lingering long after should have faded. For now, the house sleeps. The embers dim, yet the warmth remains, and time itself rests beside the hearth, wrapped in its quiet, enduring dreams. Night settles softly over the young colony, the kind of quiet that feels older than words. The moon hangs high above the coastline, a pale lantern cast over the stillness. The air carries the faintest salt of the nearby sea, mingled with the scent of cedar and cooling earth. From the wooden homes and cabins of Jamestown and Williamsburg, the last embers glow faintly through shuttered windows. One by one, voices fade, footsteps still, and the settlement gives itself to rest. The tide moves gently tonight, a rhythmic breathing against the sand. The ships anchored near the shore sway in near-perfect unison, their masts tracing arcs against the starlight. The Atlantic lies wide and gleaming, reflecting the moon as though it were a memory made of silver. Somewhere, far out beyond the visible horizon, lies England, the land of beginnings. But here, on this quiet coast, a new world is learning to dream. The fields lie asleep beneath a rising mist, rows of corn and tobacco shimmering with dew. Gardens slumber too, petals folded tight, waiting for morning light. The wind drifts gently, careful not to break the quiet. A lantern flickers once on a distant porch, then fades, leaving only the soft chorus of crickets, the rustle of trees, and the distant, steady murmur of the sea. The world feels suspended, held in a delicate pause between night and day, where every shadow and sound stretches slowly, as if the land itself is breathing in the hush-dot. It is said that in this time, the early years of peace and slow prosperity, the colonies began to find their rhythm. Trade routes opened, crops flourished, and the hum of work turned into the heartbeat of a nation being born. And yet, even amid progress, there remained a kind of gentleness, a reverence for the land that had both challenged and embraced them. Life here had grown from endurance into harmony, and the nights reflected that calm, full, unhurried dot in one of the journals of that age. A curious note appears, a strange, shared occurrence recorded by several settlers. It speaks of what they called the collective dream. One night, many across the colony reportedly woke with the same memory, the sea, glowing like molten glass, stretching endlessly under the moon. No sound, no wind, only a vast, living light pulsing softly beneath the waves. Some believed it was the spirit of the ocean blessing their new life. Others thought it was the memory of all they had left behind, finding them once more through sleep. Whatever it was, the image stayed with them and with history, even now. When you imagine that night, you can almost see it, the sleeping town, the breath of the tide, the faint shimmer of something eternal beyond sight. The dream of the settlers and the dream of the land blending together, becoming one great exhale beneath the stars. The watchman completes his final circle along the wooden fence, lantern flickering softly. He listens to the waves, the faint crackle of dying hearths, the evening hum of insects. Beyond it all, a subtle, harmonious murmur rises, like countless breaths blending into one. Not speech, not song, but the quiet presence of rest itself, settling over the fields, the fences, the water. A gentle, shared exhale that speaks of peace without needing words. In one house, a mother hums a lullaby to her child, the same tune once sung across the sea. The melody drifts through the open window, floating out toward the water. The stars seem to listen, shimmering faintly in rhythm. A candle burns low beside her, its flame bowing gently before sleep. Everywhere, life settles. The blacksmith's tools rest cold upon their bench. The clockmaker's gears are still. The fields hum with unseen life, the roots whispering beneath the soil. The colony sleeps not as a place, but as a single living breath. Somewhere, deep within that quiet, the earth itself seems to sigh, a low and tender sound, as if it too has grown weary after years of toil. The river moves slowly toward the sea, carrying with it the faint light of the moon, a scent of cedar, the reflection of 1,000 dreams. Above it all, the stars watch silently, bright and patient, timeless sentinels over the sleeping land. Their gentle light spills across rooftops, fields, and quiet gardens, touching hearts that have endured hardship and now find a rare, deep rest. The night is hushed, each sound softened. The sigh of trees, the distant lap of the river, the faint stir of animals hidden in shadow. For this single night, the new world pauses, wrapped in stillness, as if holding its breath. Every glimmering star seems to promise continuity, calm, and a sense of peace that stretches across the endless dark dot. Now the world drifts toward silence. The air cools, the waves slow their breathing, and time itself seems to curl up beside the shore. The colony, fragile, young, yet eternal in spirit, slumbers under the moon's silver hand. The wind carries with it the faint echoes of distant laughter, of hammers, of bells, of prayers, all fading gently into memory got here. The heartbeat of earth and humankind are the same. Every breath taken by those who sleep feeds the soil, and every whisper of grass returns it. In this unity, the beginning and the end dissolve into one quiet rhythm, the rhythm of belonging. You imagine walking through the settlement now, barefoot on cool ground. The windows glow faintly with dying embers. The scent of smoke, salt, and lavender hangs in the air. You pause, listening, not for words, but for peace. And there it is, in every soundless corner, the stillness that holds everything together. This is the lullaby of the new world, not of conquest, but of calm, not of noise, but of quiet endurance. The sea hums its softest note. The stars close their eyes. The horizon folds into dream. And now, as the tide fades and lanterns dim, may your mind rest beside those early shores, where time drifts like mist over water, and every dream returns home. Good night, and see you in the next dream.